So now we'll proceed with our first technical session on industry perspectives on milk processing and value addition. For this session, we have with us Dr. Trista Murli sir, founder and CEO of Urjita Food Business Consultants, Gurgaon, Haryana, as the session chair. We welcome you, sir.
Thank you. Thank you. So, thank you for the brief introduction. I have about 15 to 20 minutes time. I just put my thoughts together. I'm sorry, I'm not carrying any presentation given my busy schedule, and I got I would say, moderately short notice from IFPT, and therefore I really could not get the time to put the presentation together. And I'm going to actually address the entrepreneurs who are here. And since most of you are dairy entrepreneurs, I thought in the next 15 odd minutes, I'll put my thoughts together about the industry, give a glimpse about the industry, and actually put in some thoughts in your mind. And therefore, you can think through at the end of the session. And of course, after my session, you got some real brilliant speakers who are going to talk on their field of specialization. And from that, I'm sure you're definitely going to gain. So first question in my mind is, what is special about Indian dairy? Why should why should anyone play in the Indian dairy industry? Simply because India is the largest milk producer in the world. 198.4 million tons of milk produced in the year 2020 and growing year on year. Over the last 25 years, we have seen there's a 5% growth. If I were to compare the second largest producer, US, or the third largest producer, Pakistan, you don't see the same kind of growth as much as it has grown as far as Indian industry is concerned. So the Operation Flood, started by great stalwarts of the past, has really given some great result, and we are the world leader as far as the milk production is concerned. Average growth, as I said, has been a CAGR of about 5 to 6% year on year. Milk availability is in general not an issue, although I will touch upon certain other areas where we could have done a better job. A little more statistics about the large milk producing states in the country. There are 11 states that produce the bulk of milk as far as India is concerned. UP is the largest producer. MP, Rajasthan, Gujarat, AP, Telangana, Karnataka, Tamil Nadu, Punjab, Bihar, Haryana are large producers. Milk availability, from a production standpoint, from a per capita availability standpoint, milk is not an issue. However, milk availability is not very widespread. Northeastern states still lack availability of milk all across each district, each village, each town, etc., etc. Given that, a great work, great effort of looking at district-wise microprocessing will certainly help the future in terms of making milk available across. So as I said, 11 states produce roughly. Sorry, there is some disturbance all across. Hello?
Yes, sir, please continue.
So please continue, sir.
Yeah. So now, what happens when we produce? Let's take for round figure about 200 million tons of milk is produced. 50% of it is retained at the farmer's end, and the remaining 50% is sold. Where is it sold? It is sold to cooperatives. It could be sold to private players, and of course, unorganized sectors. What comes under unorganized sectors? Tea stalls, the delivery boy, the Gwala delivery, who takes the milk and bulk milk and supplies, halwais, all these come under unorganized sector. And if you really were to break up today, if you see, of the total milk, about 70 to 75% goes in unorganized and 20 to 25% comes in the organized sector, out of which private dairies and cooperative dairies play a role. Now, once milk is extracted, typically what happens is, it is first thing that is done is, before cooperatives or private dairies buy the milk, they test for fat SNF, procurement payment happens there, milk goes into bulk milk chillers or into milk chilling centers, and then it is filtered and chilled. Here is where robust testing, the first set of robust testing for any adulteration, etc. happens. After that, milk is again filtered, and then it is sent in chilled tankers across to various centers, where in the processing centers, again, there is a series of tests. Typically, I can talk about my mother dairy process. Roughly about 26, 27 different tests for different adulterants, and different quality parameters are tested before the milk is sent into the plant for the next step of pasteurization, chilling, packing, and then chilled distribution. That's how milk processing actually happens. There are issues if you do not process the milk in time after extraction. Typically, in less than 4 hours, you should chill it and bring it down to about 4 degrees Celsius. That is what is good. Coming to consumption, milk is a wholesome food. It can be consumed by any age group, no doubt about it. WHO actually recommends about 290 grams of milk consumption per person per day. Our availability is about 320 grams. But as I told, in terms of widespread availability, there is a problem. Therefore, availability of milk to certain states where production is less will become important factor if you want to really be very self-sufficient in terms of dairy consumption, not in terms of milk availability. Now, the other question is, selling more milk, does it help the farmer? Absolutely it does. And there was a study which is little dated. I'm talking about a study of 2014 where, a small farmer with 2 cows, sufficiently enough for him to get about 25% of his total returns. So the return for a farmer by selling milk is generally higher, and therefore milk is a profitable business for a farmer. And therefore, I see nowadays there are lots of things going on about vegan food, almond extract, that extract, this extract, etc., etc. While that goes on that side separately, I am a total pro milk guy, and I would actually recommend consumption of milk is good for you. At the same time, it's good for the farmer, and it is good for the nation in general if you look at it. Now, we talked about 75% of the milk getting into the unorganized sector and 25% getting into the organized sector. But in the last 7-8 years, if you see, the organized sector growth is roughly 22 to 24%, whereas the net category growth of dairy products in the country is about 15%. What it tells me is a different story. It tells me that with the growth in the organized sector, what will happen is consumer demand will increase. Consumer asks for quality will increase, food safety will increase, and with this, quality parameters will become much more stringent, and that is good for the consumer. That's good for an average Indian. So that's a right welcome sign in the right direction. Now, the next question is, why should we add value to milk? By converting milk into value-added products, there are several advantages. For example, you can make paneer, butter, ghee, ice cream, cheese, whey powder, whey protein concentrate, and further value addition through sports nutrition products, Shrikhand, Mishti Doi, fermented dairy products, milkshakes, probiotic milk. A whole host of products can be produced. A whole host of products can be produced. Milk is that flexible. It is a real great base to flex it into anything that you want. And in the last 5-6 years, if I see, value-added dairy is one of the fastest growing segment in the country. Of all the food products, VAD, value-added dairy, is one of the fastest growing segment. Therefore, you will see a lot more investment coming into this segment, particularly from private players. And what are the consumers looking for in this? They are looking for variety, number one. Great taste. Let me tell you, milk is healthy on its own. So there is no question of it having any other connotation with the consumer. However, whenever you sell any healthy products, great taste is a parameter. Even in milk product or any product, consumer looks, first thing is for great taste. Freshness, how fresh is the milk or the milk product? That is going to be one of the most important parameters for consumers. Adulteration free, food safety, and trust. Milk, any food product or milk product, a brand is strongly associated with trust, and therefore maintaining the trust comes to great brand parameters, great products sold, great quality, great consumer benefits, and great consumption benefits as well. Value addition is also important because you look at milk consumption. It can actually, you can actually toggle milk along various segments. For example, in breakfast, you use butter as a spread. You can have a glass of lassi there. You can actually have different types of flavored milk in breakfast as an occasion. When it comes to food, paneer or ghee, all of these are directly going into food. So therefore, there is an occasion that can play in that segment. Cheese, for example, gets into food. So Milk actually toggles along various occasions of the consumer. Therefore, it's not limited to, if you say snack foods, 4 p.m. is the consumption. Milk is not like that. Starts from 6 a.m. and could go on up to 9 p.m. in different forms, different varieties through value addition. I'll give you some simple snapshots about some numbers that I have put together. Let me tell you what kind of a profitability numbers are there with respect to a particular milk product and what kind of a growth is likely in the last. These are all some assumptions and some categorization and some cuts that I have made. So don't take it as a hard number. It could be plus minus 0.5 or plus minus 1. Milk, the EBITDA of milk or the profitability of milk is about 3 to 5%. Next 5 years, branded milk is likely to grow 7%. Curd is about 18 to 22%, highly profitable category, and growth is likely to be about 15%. Paneer also is in the same category, but 20% is the EBITDA and 5% is 18% is the likely growth. Ghee is about 10 to 15% profitability and 5% growth. Butter profitability is about 5 to 8%. Ice creams are again highly profitable, 15 to 18%, and the growth is likely to be 12%. Cheese is also 14 to 18%, and the growth is likely to be about 22%. Whey is another commodity that will grow, is 30 to 35% profitability and 17% growth. Flavored milk, 16 to 18% profitability and 24% growth. UHT milk, 12 to 15% profitability and 18% growth. And, milk-based sweets, about 25 to 30% profitability and 22% growth. So there are a whole host of parameters that actually will take milk and dairy towards value addition. And the other thing I want to tell is value-added dairy is still very small segment. If you look at the consumption pattern of Indian consumers, largely milk is consumed as milk or some product which is reconverted into milk. About 60 to 70% of the total milk that is got in the country is finally consumed only as milk. The value-added dairy is still very small. So I'm very happy to note that when entrepreneurs are coming in and looking at value-added dairy, that is the place to be in. That is the best place to be in, and that is where you are likely to actually make more profitable business, number one, and also the growth is good. And with that, obviously, you will generate more and more employment. So with this very small 15, 16 minutes, small snippet of telling you why value-added dairy is important. At the end of the day, also what matters is in terms of micro dairies, etc., investment becomes a very important tool. Some of you may think that milk is not all that profitability. I need not actually go for milk, but that may not be a right assumption, because the modern age dairies, the dairies that are coming in, are actually working on a platform which is called as D2C, which is direct to consumers. In this case, actually what happens is consumer has a consumer facing app where he presses how much milk he wants and the milk is delivered to him. With this kind of an app, what also happens is that for the guy who is manufacturing, for him, there are other advantages of actually doing a business analytics. Gone are the days when you used fuddy-duddy Excel sheets and paper-based calculation, etc. That's all gone. With the app, with the press of a button, you can calculate everything. It can tell you which area the milk is growing, where are we losing, what is happening, etc., etc. And you can actually end up in understanding business analytics much more thoroughly, with which you can actually drive the business forward. And with this, and with milk as well as value-added dairy growing in this segment, I see a great future for the dairy industry. And with activities like this, where every district is actually managing production, supply, and actually value addition, I think there is an even more better future. With these few words, thank you very much for giving me an opportunity, Dr. ARK and IIPFT, and thank you everyone for listening to me. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, sir, for providing us insights on the value addition of milk products. So now, with your permission, I would like to introduce the first speaker of our technical session.
Please.
For the first technical talk, we have with us Dr. A.K. Singh, Principal Scientist, Dairy Technology Division, ICAR NDRI Karnal. We welcome you, sir.
So, very good morning. So, Honorable Dr. Anantharam Krishnanji, Dr. T.R.S. Murli, and my fellow speaker, Dr. Lata Sabiki, and all distinguished participants. the topic on which I will discuss in brief 20 minutes is the status and scope of milk processing industry in India. And in this regard, the milk or dairy, it comes under the broad livestock sector. And as you all know, that is one of the major source of livelihood and nutritional security, which affect, almost 750 million people are associated with dairying. And whatever progress we have witnessed is because of the transformation which has happened over the last 50 to 55 years is from conventional farming to technology-led agriculture. And this is also an important fact that around 25% of the agricultural GDP comes from the dairy sector itself. As far as the current scenario of dairy industry is concerned, it is having an estimated size of around 1,15,970 crore. And we contribute around 22% of the global milk production. And last few years, even the COVID era, if you look, means Indian dairy sector is witnessing a growth rate in terms of milk production in the range of around 5 to 6%. And if you compare with any food processing sector, probably the dairy is having the maximum, much higher level of processing, that is around 35%. Not only it is important from the from the nutritional or food security point of view, but this sector also create more on-farm as well as off-farm job, which is around, close to around 75 million rural women are engaged in one or other kind of dairy processing activity. The best point is that this growth rate is around 15%. So on any account, this could be considered, and it is projected that 15% compound annual growth rate for any processing sector is quite remarkable. But on the same side, despite our maximum or highest milk producer in the world, we have a very negligible presence in the international market, and this is despite the fact that we are surrounded by all those nations which are milk deficient, and there is also demand for dairy products, for example, Middle East, SAARC nations, Asia, and Africa. Then many times, people ask whether we have to adopt a kind of model which is prevailing in most of the international or other countries, like where the only big farms are there. But my answer is that, small and marginal farmers, because they own almost 60% of the milk animal, contributes 70% of the total milk production. And not only this, but especially when we talk about the rural empowerment or women empowerment, probably these all kind of activities related to milk production, processing, these are carried out by the women. And so it is also a very good example of women empowerment through this dairying. Then coming to the scenario, what we visualize by 2050, because by that time we will figure among the top 3 economy of the world. And during that time, the size of, because India is projected to be the most populous nation on the earth. We will surpass China, and to provide feed to our growing population, the dairy sector must grow at the rate of almost 5.6% per annum, so that by that time we can achieve agricultural growth rate of around 4%. And another positive sign is that during that period, the industry will be more entrepreneur profit. Some of the other important trends which we will witness is that gradual trend towards organic milk processing. Some driving forces are like growing population, which is comprising around 60% youth, changes in dietary preferences, global trade regulations, and slow growth in farming. So definitely dairying offer a kind of alternative approach for sustainability and also in our pursuit for food and nutritional security. But on the other side, we are also having major challenges as far as the milk production is concerned, like increased food, feed, and fodder demand, because we have limited land. Is not going to, we are not going to add any land, natural resource degradation. And at the same time, climate change is also posing a lot of threat to both our whole, agricultural system. Then coming to the milk utilization pattern and the issues. So almost 45%, as Dr. Sori has also mentioned, that around 45% of the milk is consumed at the producer level itself, because they don't find any option how to channelize it. So remaining 55% milk is sold in the domestic market, which is dominated by the small or medium scale players. And again, 50% of that milk is sold as liquid milk, and that too not in the form of packaged, but mostly loose milk. 32% is converted into traditional dairy product, and remaining 18% of the milk is utilized by the so-called, like private or cooperative dairy sector, which you use, which basically manufacture some industrial kind of product. So almost 75 to 80% of our milk processing is carried out under the domain of traditional processing. And this sector having its own limitations like lack of hygiene, safety measures, absence of cold chain, and then problems in weight and measures, middlemen play exploitative role, lesser emphasis on value addition. So that's why we do not harness the real value of the milk and its nutritional virtues, and moreover, non-uniformity in the product's quality due to the absence of mechanization, particularly, and also the concepts like hygiene, safety, as I mentioned, packaging, that is also not at place in the unorganized sector. Then at the same time, we are also facing the COVID-19 challenges. And what has happened in the last 2 years is that organized, the major sufferer were the unorganized and the MSME sector. And there is also a drastic reduction in the milk procurement price. So in many areas, and particularly those states where which are known for their higher milk production, and that has affected the farmers' revenue. Moreover, the supply chain is also hampered. That has affected the availability of raw material, which are kind of the inputs which are required for milk production. Small scale processors, they are not able to process and market their product. And moreover, many industries, they were having the stocks of finished product and subsequently it is spoiled. But at the same time, it also offer opportunity in the terms of because if you talk about among the common people, probably they always talk about what kind of dietary components are there which will improve our immunity. Dr. Murli was mentioning about the plant-based alternatives, and we are also facing a new kind of challenge. And in fact, the dairy industry is also facing a lot of challenge in terms of where the word milk is used for many plant-based or nut-based kind of components, which is not true, which is not right, in the sense that we cannot compare the kind of nutritional and the therapeutic virtues of the milk, because there is not a single body system which is not affected by the milk or its digestive products. So milk is having a very diverse kind of nutrient profile. Almost 500 different type of active components have already identified, and milk mining is a continuous type of process where the scientists or researchers are trying to find out the new molecule which are having some kind of positive impact on the human health as such. Then for looking for this one district and one product, probably the kind of some of the participants, they might be interested in the milk value chain, because this is a kind of approach which is very vital, and one has to understand the value chain, and because it not only related with the milk collection, processing, and its marketing. There are a number of players. So how best we communicate, and there are many challenges like malpractices, misbranding, a lot of stakeholders are there. So how to do it in the form of backward linkages or forward linkages, that is the real challenge. And before one venture, either as an individual entrepreneur or in a group or in a formal organization, first of all, they have to understand the different players and how best they can make a kind of synergy among the various players. Then here just I want to give an emphasis, an idea that what kind different types of supply chain is existing. So if you look at the first chain, where the producer is directly selling their produce to the market, either liquid milk or some processed product, definitely the transit time will be less. So the problem of adulteration or spoilage, that can be that is usually minimized. Producer will get the remunerative price and the consumer will get the good quality product. More the stakeholders, longer will be the transit time, and the issues like high microbial count, zoonosis, and then adulteration, contaminants, preservatives. So all these kind of issues generally emerges when we have number of intermediaries in our supply chain. And nowadays, this milk quality, whenever we talk to a common person, he always think or consider it's freedom from any kind of adulterant. But milk quality is in a very holistic approach. It's not only related to the freedom, but it's also related with the particularly the genetic microorganisms, microbial counts, then antibiotic, pesticide, heavy metal, these kind of residues. Many processing induced contaminants may also come during the processing. So one has to be, it is our responsibility now to make, people aware about the other kind of challenges and the food safety issues which normally we encounter during the supply chain. As far as the cold chain status is concerned, government or Ministry of Food Processing Industries has done a lot, but still this is quite decimal. It's highly fragmented, and because of the scattered production of milk and many other agro commodities, maintaining a continuum right from the point of production to literally reaches to the consumer is remain a major obstacle or challenge. Moreover, the kind of systems which we are using for under the cold chain, generally these technologies are very poor technology, less energy efficient, and so definitely we have to. There is a scope and there is need to work on those aspects, how we can improve our technology. So, and moreover, the utilization, because majority of cold storage stores generally they are occupied only for the 6 months, and that too for a limited range of commodities, mostly the horticultural commodities. Then if we have to transform this unorganized sector to organized sector, so for that, the very first challenge is how we can ensure the uniformity in the raw material. If the raw material is good, definitely the finished product quality will be better. Then for that, we have to adopt the appropriate technological packages, because the kind of production technology which is happening in unorganized sector is not basically based on. There is a lot of generation of residues. There is very less emphasis on the fat, SNF, and the initial product quality, and also optimized parameter. So then another requirement is that how we can adopt the process line for indigenous or traditional kind of product, energy efficient service system to support the production, effective packaging, and moreover, for an entrepreneur or for a business person, what is the optimized product mix which will ensure the better return to the customer? That is also one area where we have to work, and we have to communicate with the processors. Then how to implement the stringent quality assurance, hygiene, and safety provisions, and especially under the ambit of this food safety guidelines. And another challenge or the information which is very important for any new person is how to design the effective marketing and promotional strategies. So I will give you some examples in my subsequent. So for just see the raw milk revolution, because still, despite the emergence, the benefit of consuming pasteurized milk, still a majority of consumers they prefer to consume raw milk. But this raw milk, if it comes in some packaged form, and India is one such country where there is no prohibition under the law that we cannot sell the raw milk in packaged form. So, but there are a number of challenges which we discuss often with the entrepreneur. But the best kind of option is that we can go for glass packaging system instead of going for polymer packaging. Another one, and then some kind of like innovations like vending machines is also important. Then people also talk about the organic milk. And what they consider organic milk is the milk which they get from the indigenous breeds, A1, A2. So there is a lot of controversy, and from the scientific community perspective point of view, we do not have a real answer for that which milk is better. So for us, milk is milk, whether it is from indigenous breed or from crossbred animal or from any animal. It is full of nutrient. So, but again, if somebody is interested to venture into the area of organic milk, and under this this one district, one product program, there are a number of districts, particularly in the eastern part of the country, where the agriculture practices are more or less organic, and definitely they can adopt the organic agriculture or animal husbandry practices so that they can produce organic milk. But ultimately, they have to find the market, because this is one category of product which require niche market. Then sometime people ask, or this is very common query, that which product category I should adopt. So there are two criteria. One is how much investment one can make. Then what is the consumer base or easily available kind of market. So in this, on this accord, probably the indigenous dairy product, which include coa-based sweets, acid-basic coagulated dairy product, chana, ghee, butter, dahi. So this is having large consumer base, the kind of food processing machinery, the kind of technological in competency which is required is more a kind of art. The only thing what we have to do is we have to infuse an element of science and technology into it, so that we can easily convert this unorganized sector or halwai sector into the organized one, which is ultimately the aim of this particular scheme also. So this traditional dairy product, because here the higher level, the level of value addition is between 100 to 200%. And if you carry out the SWOT analysis, it is having a mass appeal, simple preparation process, high profit margin, as I said. Then it also permits a lot of innovation, and the cost of production is also low. On the other side, the weaknesses are like a small scale production, lack of technologically standardized product, lack of packaging, regional specificity. And again, it is the time when we have to convert these weaknesses to our strength. And opportunities are like greater access to the global market, because every sixth or seventh person on the globe is an Indian. And there is a sizable population of Indian diaspora in the Western countries, where we have an opportunity to introduce some of our products. So a lot of export potential. The threats are that majority of these processes are for, like a small scale one. So, pilot scale or commercial scale production definitely will affect the sensory quality, may also increase the cost of production. So in this regard, because we are blessed with the diversity, probably this is the time when we have to realize that even I have just given an example of different type of pedas and listed only 4 or 5 for which people are more or less familiar, whether it is Dharwar peda or Mathura peda or Lal peda, Bal mithai. So there is great diversity of our traditional dairy product, and there is also substantial scope that now we can introduce these products on pan-India market. So this, because and even some of the product category, for example, you take the example of Mishti Dahi. There are a lot of multinational companies which are producing Mishti Dahi, despite its high calorific value, but because it is finding acceptance among the consumers. Similarly, there are a number of traditional sweets which are finding which are quite popular among the consumers, and we can at the same time, under the one district, one product commodity, probably if we have those kind of product, this is the time when we have to look for their geographical indication or GI tag. And at the same time, these districts or these geographical areas should be earmarked only on for those kind of product. Then next comes the smart, we have to adopt the smart processing technologies. Why? Because we have to deliver the wholesomeness, maintain the wholesomeness of the product at the same time. And in this regard, under Indian conditions, probably the UST processing is the need of the hour. And we have to, it is high time, but the higher cost of plant and machinery. So engineers have to work in this direction, that how they can lower down the price of UST processing machine and also aseptic packaging system. Other kind of smart technologies which we can adopt are like ohmic, infrared, or in thermal and non-thermal, like membrane processing. Already membrane processing is gaining acceptance in the dairy industry, particularly for the production of high value added ingredients. Then promising packaging solutions, I will not go into the detail. One of my colleagues, Dr. P.N. Raju, will discuss. But this is the time when, at least for the niche market, we have to look for smart or promising packaging solutions for our dairy products to ensure the safety. Then dairy industry cannot survive only with limited range of the products. So definitely it is an opportune time to diversify, and they have to keep on diversifying, because in dairy product, especially in the northern belt, there is another issue of seasonality. Some products are only popular, quite in demand in a particular season. The industry has to keep on adding new range of product, and the base for these kind of work should be the kind of pleasure or sensory attributes, convenience, and the health attributes. Whenever we design or formulate a new product, these are the three important component which we have to give due consideration. So prospective category of dairy products are like fortified, ethnic dairy products, gourmet food, functional beverages, composite or fusion food, and then specialized products for especially for geriatric, like aged persons, for weaning purpose, or the people who are suffering with one or other kind of diseases. For that, also some special kind of, and dairy or milk is having a lot of scope for that one. So liquid milk can also be a very ideal source of delivery system for the micronutrient. In our institute, our research group has done a lot of work on micronutrient fortification using vitamin A, D, calcium, and iron. And milk is one of the ideal vehicles for delivering this micronutrient, especially the skim milk. Okay, so after fat removal, we know there is substantial reduction or almost complete elimination of vitamin A and D. So by that skim milk can be fortified with these vitamins and can be sold at a premium price in the market. The another kind of options is because we have a great diversity of the plant-based commodities, particularly the herbs. And these herbs, we know they are full of nutraceutical component, and in our pursuit for delivering or diversifying, probably these herbs could be, as already previous speakers have mentioned about the turmeric and many other herbs. In our institute, we have also done this kind of work. So there is a lot of scope, but again, we have to understand when we mix the two unfamiliar kind of product, what will be its manifestation on the quality and the health claim also, and also the stability of the product. So some example is like ghee, because this is one commodity which is, there is continuous demand. If you look at the statistics, you will find that there is continuous growing demand of ghee, not only in our Indian market, but also especially in the Middle East and in many European nations, because now they are using it as a cooking medium. So what innovation people have done, like they have added curcumin, they have added many, like our institute, we have developed Arjuna herbal ghee, the Shatavari, Ashwagandha. So here the bioactive components of these herbs, they were added during the ghee manufacturing without affecting its legal standards and also its sensory acceptability. But on the other side, addition of these herbs also contributed for a higher shelf life of the resultant product. Probiotic dairy products, although among the functional dairy food, if you see the 65% share is of the probiotic dairy product. But again, in Indian context, it is still in infancy, and probably dairy products offer the best matrix as far as the probiotic delivery of a diet is concerned. And there are a number of reasons. Because foremost reason is that because already fermented food products, they are known, or people have acceptability that they are healthy for our they are healthy for our healthy, and moreover they have a positive effect on our gut microflora. Moreover, in the dairy products or milk components, they assist in optimal expression of the probiotic functionality, whether it is related to the antioxidant, antimicrobial, or even like anti-carcinogenic kind of activity. And some of the important genes encoding probiotic functions are induced on exposure of milk. So it upgrades those genes which are basically having which are required for better expression of the functionality of probiotic attributes. Then another category of product is non-bovine milk-based dairy products. So these, because we know that cow milk, apart from this bovine milk, cow or buffalo milk, the goat milk, sheep milk, and camel milk, and even nowadays even donkey milk has attracted the attraction of the stakeholders because of their positive effect under certain disease conditions like cardiovascular disease, infant malnutrition, osteoporosis, inflammatory bowel diseases, anemia, and malabsorption syndrome, because their nutrient composition is somewhat different from the bovine milk. But at the same time, this difference also offer a kind of challenge for developing good quality product by using this non-boil milk. So our research group is working in that direction, and we have developed a lot of technologies. And even some of these technologies have a scope for commercialization also. So this is one category area where even in pockets, certain pockets, especially the arid or mountainous regions where these goat and sheep, they are reared by the local people. So milch breed can be promoted among those people, and the milk, resultant milk, can be converted into high value kind of engagement. So some of these traditional cheeses are already popular. We have worked on halloumi cheese and also Gouda cheese we use. Regarding this marketing innovation, I'm just giving an example that because we organize EDP programs in our institute, so we suggested, because a lot of young entrepreneurs, they set up the dairy farm, and then their primary product is milk. So they were finding a lot of challenge, because consumer always say that how we can you can ensure us that your milk is free from any adulterant. So in our institute, we have developed some rapid strip based detection kit. We suggested, why don't you carry this kit along with you, yourself, your vehicle, or the point where you are setting up this milk vending machine, and any customer should be provided an opportunity to test. So if a person is testing his milk, which is free from urea, sucrose, starch, if all these tests comes negative, definitely it will attract other consumers also who were observing or seeing. Then another fortunate thing is regarding this mechanization is that dairy processing and packaging equipment company is quite active, and they have ability to fabricate as per the scale of production. So we have modular pasteurizer, we have the scraper assisted desiccation machines like conical process wet cocoa manufacturing. In our institute, we have also developed some innovative kind of equipment which are not costing much, but in the range of around 10 to 15 lakh for a batch size of around 250 liters per batch. So this is again a very positive sign, and probably, as I mentioned, that especially for energy efficiency point of view, slightly more automation point of view, the dairy industry, processing, equipment manufacturing industry has still a scope to work on those aspects. Then this is also a very important time when the government has launched, and we have a very good startup and startups ecosystem which is in place, which not only provide an opportunity for capacity building, consultancy, outsourcing hub, business incubation centers, testing facilities, then IPR related kind of issues. So all, one under one roof, one can get all these informations. I'm just giving you the two success story of our incubation center. The one is Misty Farmer Producer Company, which is a consortium of around 300 milk producers. And some of them are, we work with this group on both the backward linkage as well as forward linkage. So we assisted them in improving their milk production, milk productivity, the quality of the milk. And at the same time, we also provided our plant and machinery to start their business. They purchased some of the technologies like Bajra Lassi, whey-based drinks, and even, with us, they have innovated some products which are sweets, which are based on milk and non-dairy solids, so like fruits and vegetables. And currently, they have a turnover of around 2.5 crore rupees. They are collecting around 7 to 10,000 liter milk per day. Another innovation is like by these couple who are owning a farm which is having around 250 gear animals with them. So they're with very good productivity. And what they are doing, they are simply chilling it, filling it in a gabble top biodegradable packaging material, selling in the niche market at the price of around 150 to 160 rupees. Even they are converting their surplus fat into ghee, butter, ghee. And for that, all kind of technical support is provided by us. So this is so there are, in my presentation, there are so many jungling words, and this is the time when we all have to stick together and work incoherently. And ultimately, lastly, I would like to conclude that science-led growth and development in food and agriculture will continue to feed the future India. But a mission mode action like this particular scheme under PFM, this Prime Minister formalization of medium and small and medium enterprises, one district, one product action is required to address the issues of productivity, processing, value addition, and even the malnutrition, safety, and also make a dent in the international market. And for that, we all have to work together to achieve a common nation goal to provide food and nutrition secure for our nation. And government initiative like Vocal for Local, Atmanirbhar Bharat, and PMFAP project, they can be an integral part of our this journey. Thank you for your giving me and this opportunity to present and for patience hearing. Thank you, sir.
Thank you so much, sir, for providing us the information. Now we will move ahead with the next technical talk. We have between us Dr. Lata Sabiki, ma'am, Principal Scientist at Dairy Technology Division at ICAR NDRI Karnal. We welcome you, ma'am.
Thank you very much. Yeah, so Honorable Director, IIFPT, Dr. Ananth Ramakrishnan, the chairman of the session, Dr. Murali, and my fellow speakers, and all the audience, all the members in the audience. I'm here to speak on processing of milk for value addition. Given an overview of everything, and a lot of what I am going to say may seem a repetition of what he said. So why do we need to dispose of milk? It is very obvious that it is for generation of income. And we also know that when we talk of a dairy business, every dairy plant in the country has a standard product profile. Normally, every dairy, they before starting the dairy, they think of, I'm talking about processing plants, they think of the product profile, and they go about sourcing the equipment, the raw material and everything, and they start the business. However, in the past couple of years, we have seen that most of the dairies have stockpiling of these standard products, particularly the skim milk powder, ghee, butter, and all these things. So, and especially during the past couple of years, there have been demand for consumer-centric products, products that increase the immunity, products that take care of the COVID-19 situation and all that. So, in that aspect, as well as in the aspect of providing the much needed livelihood for our 100 million or more than that dairy farmers that we have in the country, these programs, the PMFME as well as the ODOP programs have been launched. So for the ODOP program, we need to have a kind of classification as to what are the products that can be manufactured, which can be rendered as local. So here I'll be giving a classification which may suit some of the ODOP programs, but some of which are high value and so require more inputs in terms of equipment and the other infrastructure that are needed. However, this is just a it's a classification which will club products into patterns that are prevalent in the market these days. So the first one is the product group that the common man purchases, that we see every day in the market. Like, for example, fluid milk products. It can be liquid milk or beverages made from milk. Then the high-fat products, which are ghee, butter, and others. Paneer, that is a coagulated product. Then we have fermented products. Dahi and lassi are our own. Traditional and also milk powder and baby, the more specialized ones, such as baby infant food, spoke of in his inaugural speech. Then one sector which is being positioned, especially in these days when more and more women folk go out to work and they have less time to prepare food, are the ready to eat, ready to prepare, ready to serve. Then there are several breakfast alternatives. If you don't have time to prepare breakfast, you just grab one package or bottle and you have that, and it provides you the nutritional requirement that you need. Then packaging modifications are there. Packaging modifications, in fact, can go for all products. It is common to all products that are there. Then nutrition. Obviously, all these products are supposed to be giving us adequate quantities of all the nutrients that we require. Then there are products which are being positioned as for specific diseases, to combat pandemic, like that one that we are seeing now, this turmeric milk and several other products are there in the market these days. Then ingredients, which is Dr. Ashish talked about mining of components from milk. So value-added ingredients from milk components. It is a separate science in itself, extraction of these ingredients, purification of these ingredients, their packaging, marketing. So this is an area which would require more infrastructure and more inputs in terms of finances as well as the technical know-how. Then packaging modifications, for example, novel films, edible packaging that are coming up, smart packaging. Here again, another speaker will be there during the next session, so I'll not dwell on this. Then organic and natural foods, Dr. Ashish spoke about. These are niche products, these are luxury products and premium pricing. There are, you get multiple times revenue for for selling these products which claim to be organic. Then one of this is the traditional dairy products, which again my predecessor also spoke about this. Traditional dairy products are the ones that have several plus points. This is because of the market size, the sheer market size, and the number of consumers that are there for this segment of the dairy products is huge. Therefore, it has a distinct advantage to go in for, especially for our ODOP and other programs such as these. It is also suitable because of the several technological developments that are taking place and have already taken place in this. Novel techniques such as mechanization. I agree with Dr. Ashish that we require more inputs from the dairy engineers of the country to fabricate and to design equipment which are required for small scale processing and mechanization of all this, so that we can transgress from the halwai mode to the pilot mode, at least for the present, and maybe later to an industrial mode. The technologies, modern technologies, such as more recent technologies, in fact, such as membrane filtration, then micro encapsulation, all these can be a part of or can be incorporated into the technologies for traditional dairy products. And the work that is going on in this field are low calorie traditional products to cater to the maybe the lactose intolerant people, or the obese and those who are watching their weight, or even the diabetics. Then micronutrient enriched fortification of these products with more nutrients, high protein products, proteins which claim to be to have more protein, spices and herb and plant materials incorporated. All these have been worked upon, and they can be good choices for such a program. Among cheeses, India is not a cheese making country, but nevertheless, especially in the urban areas. Cheeses are becoming popular, and particularly with the growth of the pizza industry and the preference for especially the youngsters for pizza, the demand for mozzarella cheese has increased. And this is the right time to position ourselves as a mozzarella cheese manufacturing as well as exporting country because of our wealth of buffalo milk. As mozzarella cheese is traditionally made from buffalo milk. Cheeses from non-bovine milks, Dr. Ashish also spoke on this. These are also we are mastering the technology for these, and in those areas where the non-bovine animals are bred and their milk is available in large quantities or in processable quantities, this is an option. Here again, improved techniques. Maybe continuous production at some later stage, membrane technology to retain more solids so that the losses in whey can be contained, and others to accelerate the ripening if you are going in for more ripened cheeses. Among the frozen dairy products, we are seeing unconventional flavors. For example, the pan flavor is getting very popular in ice cream. High protein ice cream, a lot of work is going on high protein ice creams. And another recent, in the past 5 or 10 years, product, frozen yogurt is giving very tough competition to the ice cream industry. Composite dairy foods or dairy products is something that we are very familiar with. Indian cuisine always had these composite dairy foods in the form of payasam, kheer, dalia, raita, which contain cereals and vegetables, and they are mixed with some or the other dairy product. These days, the work is going on, or the emphasis is more on minor cereals, so that the traditional cereals can be spared for the normal cuisine or the nutrition. Such minor cereals such as bajra, pearl millet, finger millet, sorghum, barley, all these are being used in dairy products. And some of the products that have been developed are biscuits, complementary weaning foods, pastas, malted milk products, extruded snacks, which resemble, the kurkure and other things which little children are so fond of these days. Then pearl millet lassi, other fermented beverages, smoothies and all. And the advantage of these products is that the final product is rich in fiber, and it has a superior amino acid profile, and also it is rich in the micronutrient contents and minerals. Positioning, which we can look forward to. Because milk and milk products is the only source of animal protein for the large number of vegetarians that are there in our country. And so this gives us a very distinct opportunity to present and position these products for as high protein foods or as health foods for the consumers. And the dairy products can also be fortified with vitamins, minerals, and other nutrients, omega-3 fatty acids. And for gastrointestinal health also, the addition of prebiotics, probiotics, and their combination of symbiotics, increasing the fiber content of the dairy products. All these are the choices that one has when we are talking about the dairy processing. Then dairy for health also can include plant ingredients to increase the immune health, and the products for a particular segment of people like geriatric products, products that are suitable for lactating women and women who are breastfeeding, for children, infants, and also those who are involved in the sports and more active lifestyle. Foods for diabetic individuals, those who are suffering from CVD, and our ancient science of Ayurveda always had medicines which include dairy ingredients in the for helping the health of eyes, bones, skin. Maybe in place of these medicines, we can position the dairy products themselves as food, so that their daily consumption or routine consumption can keep us away from these diseases. Non-bovine milk, a lot of R&D activities are going on this, and dairy products such as cheeses, powders, and other value-added ingredients can be processed from these. We already know that goat milk is being marketed to manage the mosquito-driven disease, dengue. And camel milk is positioned as being good for diabetes. However, a lot of scientific intervention is required now, more than ever, so that the particular ingredients that are responsible for these therapeutic actions can be identified and maybe can be marketed as high value, low volume products. Now, the alternative for way forward for us, for the dairy processors and dairy manufacturers, there is a commercial value for high value dairy products. I've already mentioned this, and which can be applied in the food and pharmaceutical industry. I concede here that this is one segment which requires more or higher infrastructure. But just to mention, as a part of the classification that I had done earlier, we have milk protein concentrates, buttermilk powder, whey powder, colostrum ingredients, and modified milk proteins, whey fractions, which are all these high value, low volume ingredients that can be part of this niche product area. For a larger canvas, we already have a thriving dairy industry. We have a lot of cooperative societies, cooperative, the milk federations that are there in the states. And also there are other multinational and also our local companies which are making dairy products and marketing them. However, there are still problems, and this organized dairy is only very minor fraction of our dairy industry. So encouraging the startup and milk producer companies through these government schemes is what is required, and before increasing the profits, decreasing the length of the supply chain, as already mentioned by Dr. Ashish, and also to overcome the lack of the cold chain, which is a very pertinent problem that our processors and milk producers face. This is probably my last slide, and here I'm repeating what Dr. Sodhi mentioned in the morning. Whatever work we do or whatever products we churn out, and whether it is by a larger industry or by the local producers as a part of the ODOP scheme, the consumer has to be satisfied. And today's consumer wants a conventional product, authentic product, and a pure product in a packaged form. More importantly, or what the consumer really wants is he wants a product which tastes as if that product has been made in his own kitchen, in her own kitchen, by her, whoever makes the food at home, like the grandmothers used to make. So, however, and we already have these products in our kitchens. We already in India we make so many dairy products and consume them at home. But the challenge here is really to scale up that small home recipe to a formula which can be repeatedly produced with the same quality day on and on. And so to commercially optimize that formula will require expertise as well as a lot of precision. So what is required of these, the dairy processors in the locality, the farmer producer companies that will come up as a part of this, is that you will have to hire well-qualified personnel who are trained in their respective field and who have the skill to manufacture these products, to assess these products for their quality, so that your venture is a success. Thank you very much for the opportunity given to me for sharing with you my views on this.
Thank you so much, ma'am, for sharing your views with us. Now we will proceed with our next technical talk. For this, we have with us Professor S. Ravi Kumar, former Dean, College of Dairy Technology, SVVU Tirupati. We welcome you, sir. The session is over to you.
So I should thank the organizers, the director of IFPT, as well as the other organizations. And also, let me briefly tell the aspects of the equipment. So if I go by point, the milk is the most perishable of the agricultural commodities. It hardly has a few hours, maybe maximum 3 to 4 hours. So it has to be chilled without any time delay. That's the most important. In any processing aspects of the dairy industry, time is always a factor. And also that since it's hygiene, it's an edible food product, so it's perishable as well as food product. So the equipment has to be under high hygienic standards have to be maintained, and also it should be cleanable, that particular thing. So the design aspects of how the equipments are joined, how the equipment are designed itself, it should be appropriate for cleaning aspects, cleaning of the thing with some CIP cleaning or even manual cleaning also. We'll see with slides some of the details of it. The dairy industry being seasonal, it has to take care of the maximum demand when it is happening, say October to February, the procurement. So it should meet the maximum demand day of the maximum demand. So mostly by itself, because of the seasonality, the equipment will be over-designed. That's buying one go, the entire assembly, it should not be a problem. But if you're buying it piecemeal, then the equipment should be able to be related to the upstream or downstream in the process, say like procurement, collection, chilling, then processing, storage, etc. All these upstream and downstream equipment, they must be compatible, especially in terms of size and fittings that are there. Threaded joints are usually SMS threads or IDF threads. So those threads joining must be suitable. Otherwise, there will be a continuous leakage and a problem will be such things in there. Most of the equipment, once they're like storage tanks or those things, they must be self-draining, not a drop of milk, cleaning solution, water, all the things should be remaining. That's the most important of the fundamentals of the dairy equipment design that is there. The surfaces, of course, has to be stainless steel. The number of varieties of stainless steel are there, but most common is the SS304. And if it is slightly more corrosive or more concentrated milk is there, like evaporators and dryers, it is 316. The difference is the molybdenum. But in either case, whether it is the SS304 or 316, you must insist the equipment supplier that you should give the certified thing. There are a number of steel varieties, and you may be cheated with the quality of the steel that is supplied or made of the equipment. Also, surface finish should be of 150 grit at least. In other words, 0.4 roughness average. If it is something highly, say something like a biotechnological thing or a culture storage, it should be 300 grit. Otherwise, normally it's 150 grit surface finish should be there. Since both these aspects, the manufacturers must certify. Maybe you may not be able to definitely test it, but certify. And also you have in the market, the molybdenum kits are available. So to differentiate between 304 and 316, the molybdenum kit, if the molybdenum is there, then it is 316. You can be assured of that. Then also the surface treatment must have been there. There will be a wide range in the purchase and the prices of the equipment. The difference is the treatment given to the equipment, the material that is there, the stainless steel. It should be pacified so that the chromium oxide layer is formed on the surface. That is important again. Otherwise, very easily it will get corroded. And of course, manufacturers must be made to give the certificate of the equipment standard. So here the examples are very visually clear. The draining should be complete and also cleanable. This, if you see these corners, cleaning is difficult. And also here also, something will be left over. For an engineering point of view, manufacturing, this is easier. But for a technology or the product cleanliness, hygiene point of view, this is most important. That's the most important. And also no thread should be exposed. That is again a important thing. Say for storage tank levels, the floor may be level towards drainage, but the tank must be level towards the outlet of its thing. So therefore the leveling is important. And that for leveling, those threads should be internal ones like that. Even here, the edges should be having what is called as knuckle radius. Around 25 mm knuckle radius is important, significant for all the corners that is there. Even the pipelines are invisible, contaminants that is there. If you see the pipelines, from large pipe to the smaller pipeline, unless there is some kind of a proper joining, there can be an accumulation or liquid being there. And moisture is the best medium for bacteria to transport. Even the slope of the thing, over a period of time, it may get saggy, but that you should take care. There should be proper sloping must be there. It is the actual defects that will be. If you see over here, the water is still stagnant, so that should not happen. Even a little bit of water accumulation will be a problematic one. And also the welding, where all the welds should be properly smoothly ground to smoothness. Engineering weld, they say if you grind it, the strength will go down. But here the welding has to be ground to smoothness. That's the difference between normal equipment and the hygiene that has to be there. Here again, this is an actual photograph taken during inspection. The welding spatter is not yet there, and that means over a period of time that will get dislodged. Of course, it's a contamination, but it will also get dislodged and go into the milk or whatever the preparation. Ghee tank. It is actually a ghee tank that I had inspected, and was surprised to see such a poor finish that is there. So do not just trust. Even while the fabrication of the equipment is going on, you can insist that you can inspect the fabrication, the manufacturer or supplier. You can insist that I will inspect the equipment while in fabrication itself, because once insulation is put on or something is that, you cannot exactly test that for the process or the finish of the system inside. Yeah, the speakers were insisting on cold chain, etc. The very first equipment that we encounter is the bulk milk coolers. Here, the bulk milk coolers are generally given for the ISO 5708 standard. But there are certain minor details over it. Say if it is 5708, 2A Roman number. 2 means it's suitable for 2 milkings. But again, a crucial point of view. Then also, that means it can cool half of it in the morning and half of the milk collection in the evening. A is the ambient temperature limit, that is, say, 38 degrees centigrade or so. And also 2 is the speed at which it is being cooled. So if it's 2 means it will cool the first milking, that is half of it, in 3 hours. And the second milking, that is added to the first milking, in 1.5 hours. Here comes the devil in the detail. That is, they assume it's a European standard. They assume that it's equal milking, so equal quantity of morning and evening. But actually in India, the farmer supplies the high-fat milk in the morning and keeps the low-fat milk for himself, for his consumption. So it's usually it is 60-40 or even 70-30. So carefully, the size and capacity of the bulk cooler is crucial when you are selecting. If it is the capacity is small, then cooling is slow. If the capacity is too large, then milk may even freeze if the control systems are not that good. So here the bulk coolers are of 2 types: direct expansion type, where the refrigerant is directly put into the dimpled outer jacket of the tank. This from the bottom view of the tank that is there. So this dimpled sheets are the costliest component, and usually it's imported. Nowadays, I think probably it's being manufactured in India also. The other one is the IBT type, where the tank is there all right, but at the bottom there will be liquid water tank. Submerged in it is the cooling coils that are the refrigerant coils. And these coils, the pump will spray the chilled water to the side. The small advantage is that you can run it for longer period of time with a lesser capacity compressor. And nowadays, instead of 3 hours, the concept is you bring down the temperature to 10 degrees fast. And then if it is a bit slower also, the microbiologically, it is not that something. So what we can do is have a small plate heat exchanger. We'll discuss later on. The plate heat exchanger can be fixed, and this chilled water can be circulated along in parallel to the milk that is being circulated. So that is one innovation in here which can increase the speed. The other innovation is the refrigeration system. The heat that is expelled in the condenser, that can also be stored, and the efficiency can be improved. These are the wide varieties where we have the direct expansion time, where they are shown earlier, the difference, and also the ice bank tank type. The sizes differ from 500 liters to 5,000 liters. Generally, here they say that the management point of view of the collection center or the overall economics, they say that minimum it should be 1,000 liters or 2,000. Very few villages or village clusters are getting more than 1,000 liters. Especially here, the problem is too many players are chasing too little milk in villages. This is a fact. So therefore, each player who is getting the milk is much less than 1,000 liters or 500. Definitely should. It's not like in Gujarat, where each collection center itself will be having 10,000 liters like that. That's not the product. So crucial thing is the capacity of the bulk cooler that has to be chosen. So this is the IBT type over here, and of course I had already discussed things. Small plate heat exchanger, if you add, then the speed of cooling up to 10 degrees fast, this is the best way that can be there. Bulk milk coolers, if it is not located properly, and if you are collecting milk itself from far away, then it is a waste, because the psychotropes will grow, and that will cause bitter peptides to be there in the milk, and that should be there. So location, size of bulk milk cooler is crucial. And many of the dairies, they felt that it is better to have directly a chiller at the plant. So next equipment is the plate heat exchanger, where the frame will be there to which the plates are hanged, and the gap in between the plates is maintained by the gasket, and in the plate pack that is there, one is at the fixed end and the other is pushed, and the plate pack is brought together. The advantage is you can see the surface of the plates for its cleanliness, and the corrugations bring the rapid transfer of heat, and instead of a bulk cooler where the milk is in bulk quantity, here the narrow thin layer is passing. Therefore, in few seconds the milk is chilled down to 4 degrees centigrade. This is the main advantage of the plate heat exchanger. Now it is being ubiquitous in most of the dairies. The plate heat exchangers are being used for many of the heat exchange thing. One thing is the alternate gaps are by the process fluid, and the alternate gap is the service fluid, that may be chilled water to chill or the hot water to heat, as we see in the plate heat the pasteurizers over there. So this chiller must be properly designed, or capacity to the previous dumping rate, or the tanker dumping rate, and also next to the next processing storage tanks, etc. So the chiller capacity must be synchronized with the previous upstream equipment crucially. Then downstream it may be storage tank as it is. There is no chance of milk getting adulterated with water or water getting mixed because of the typical nature of the gaskets that are there. Even if the one leakage is there, it will leak outside, and it will be visible where exactly leak is happening, and the gasket can be replaced. It is always better to replace gaskets in a set. That's what they say. instead of opening and refitting gaskets each time. That's crucial. Only thing is the water should be available in 1 to 1.5 degrees centigrade that from a ice bank tank. That is crucial for the plate heat exchanger to operate. The storage tanks, again, of course, there are horizontal type. This is only for the description sake. It's not to show the components, but not its proportional drawing. It's not the proportional drawing. But thing is that the inner thing is stainless steel, and as I had earlier shown that the inner details, the agitator is also vertical over here with a certain support. All these inner details thing, they must be smooth ground, and a dish-shaped one also helps in having a curvature that is easier for cleaning. For cleaning, you have a CIP inlet under pressure. And of course, after the stainless steel cylindrical vessel, the next will be the insulation, that is usually thermocol or the expanded polystyrene, expanded polyethylene, and that also should be sufficiently thickness not to raise the temperature by 2 degrees in 18 hours. That's the standard that is there. So what you say that you should fill the tank with chilled water, say for 4 degrees centigrade, and see that the temperature does not raise. That's how you will test when the storage tank is there. And also there shouldn't be any leakage. Even when the gap is given a breathing hole at the bottom over here. Because chilled water and cleaning solution, they have different temperatures, so therefore that the breathing has to be there. Then the outer MS sheet may be there, which has it can be MS or it can be even stainless steel sheet. If it is MS, the cream colored paint that is there. The outlet, the sloping should be to outlet. 1:12 is the standard. Then with a valve, etc. The inlet has to be a non-foaming type. It should be projected to the surface so that it will slide, because milk is a highly foaming type of liquid. For easy in unloading and loading, you must have an air vent. That is again vermin-proof mesh should be there. These are the details that so every storage tank, not a single feature should be missed. The other thing is the light and side glasses, where you can check the level with the buffing done at the opposite surface of it over there. Paint is not recommended over here. And also, there may be some nowadays load cells or strain gauges are now fixed so that you can digitally take the level of the milk quantified. Then also you have a thermo well that will be for the temperature measuring, and the thermo well is at an angle and it's an SS tube blocked at the end with oil or ceramic powder for a close contact. The temperature must be representative of the liquid temperature. That's why you have a close contact with the oil at an angle. And of course, a sampling outlet will also be there at one of the lowest points, so that it will be able to take samples. But it's always there, but the storage tank should not be filled to very limited load. If we say 10,000 liters, don't keep 1,000 liters, 1,500 liters. The temperature is going to raise faster. That's an important thing that is there. You have an agitator through a reduction gear system. Agitates around 28 to 30 RPM. Through a reduction gear. One thing is, care must be taken that the lubricating oil should not flow into the milk and add to from bad unhygienic condition. So this is for the next stage of processing is the pasteurization. For a small scale pasteurization, batch pasteurization is the best one. This low temperature, short time, low temperature, long time one, that is 63 degrees centigrade for 30 minutes, or even time temperature combination may vary. This is a double jacketed one. The inner cylindrical vessel is surrounded with a jacket in which hot water or chilled water can be supplied at a particular rate. If it's a continuous circulation one also, it's possible. And so that the temperature has to reach, so up from 4 degrees centigrade storage tank to the whatever the 63 degrees centigrade, it will take time. Then held at that temperature for the 30 minutes, and then again hot water is drained and chilled water is supplied over here. It has to be provided with again a agitator, and some controls may be there. This may be you can choose from say from 100 liters to even 1,000 liters. Multiple purpose tank is there. It can be used for the other purposes also, so for storage itself, if it is small scale one. So it's a versatile equipment. The other one is the HTST, the one high temperature short time one. Earlier it used to be installation capacity used to be a big affair. We used to have from 5,000 liters to 10,000, 20,000 liters. Now the skid mounted units are available, very easy to install, right from 100 liters per hour to 500 liters and 1,000 liters per hour. For a small scale operator, this will be ideal one. Only thing is you must have a steam supply and also chilled water supply for this. The steam supply and chilled water should be of sufficient quantity to match the capacity. Sometimes they may not match the outside one. That you should have to take care of it. The temperature may be 72 degrees centigrade for 16 seconds for normally, but because the quality of milk is poor, we may go to a higher temperature. 78 degrees centigrade is also there, and cooled one. Now, mainly here may not be possible, but if it is larger one, insulation is important. Insulation of the equipment, especially. So this is the one equipment. It is linked to the cream separators also, so that at a particular temperature, it can be taken out for at 40 degrees. The cream separator can also be there. If I go through the sequence, if the time permits, the pump is here. The flow rate is controlled so that it will pass through the holding section for 16 seconds. This has to happen at the installation time itself. That's the important one. Then it passes through various sections. Each section is nothing but a plate heat exchanger only. Only thing is, have a connecting plate so that you can be tapped for various other processes like cream separation or homogenization that is there. So at 40 degrees or so, it may be connected to filters and cream separators that must match to the capacity of the pasteurizers. That is again important one. And then heating section, then again it may go to the say around 60 degrees, 55, 60 degrees, you may go to the homogenizer and then back for the heating. The heating is done by hot water, not directly by steam. The hot water is generated through either expansion vessel in which steam is directly introduced into water that is being circulated, or through a plate heat exchanger, or even a tubular heat exchanger. Nowadays it is a tubular heat exchanger. So almost 3 generations of variations have updated. The older one, you may have only the vessel in which steam is directly heated, but here the pasteurizer, the plate heat exchanger or the tubular heat exchangers can be there, and with a proper control of the temperature of the hot water. It should not be too hot. It may be 85 or so. That's insufficient to heat the milk to 78 degrees centigrade. But after the holding section, where this for 16 seconds it is there, temperature is measured, and a flow diversion valve may be provided over here or at the end of the process to divert the flow if the process parameters are not reached. That's again an important consideration. Here the holding tubes are generally not being insulated, but it can be insulated over here. Even these plates are now being covered in insulation. Only of course it will be, inspection will be poorer, but insulation is possible and to conserve energy. So because the people are saying energy conservation is important, so these aspects can be done. And then it will be chilled to the 4 degrees centigrade, and again the flow diversion valve will take care of that particular parameters, and then to the forward direction that is there. So we have the innovations of right from 100 liters to 500 liters, 1,000 liters HTST. Pasteurizer with skid-mounted ones are available for a smaller operator. So this is a cream separator, right from say 60 liters to 500 liters capacity is there. And main thing is that this is open one, the offline they call it as. A little bit warm milk, if it is there, sufficient for the separation of the cream. We have a spindle and motor that is rotated with the discs inside that can rotate it at a sufficient speed so that the higher density milk, that is 1.028, 1.032, that will be pushed to the periphery, and fat is pushed to the center. When the cream is pushed to the center, then that cream outlet, it comes around, say, 40% or 25 to 40% fat cream can be obtained. Cream screw is there that will control the flow rate of that. The one thing is that the entire body may be of stainless steel, or if it is MS, then properly painted for its maintenance. Even the discs are sometimes tin or something, but stainless steel is preferable with a float control. Float also should be stainless steel nowadays. Earlier it used to be tin or something, but it's not permitted now at FSSAI. The alignment must be proper, otherwise the cream separation will not happen, and with a loud sound, etc. The other one is the homogenizer that is there. So this homogenizer, of course, I skipped the bigger ones because for entrepreneurs, the smaller capacity, 1,000 liters cream separator is more than enough. Bigger ones online, you have a hermetic cream separators and also self-descending cream separator. I'm not covering because short of time. So we have homogenizers where the entire system of developing pressure is the main equipment, and then it is released. Pressure is released in two stages. One is at 175 kg and another is at 35 kg pressure. Only thing is there shouldn't be any air leakage over here, and also the capacity of the homogenizer should match if it is online to the pasteurizer over there. The homogenizers maybe a single cylinder one where the pulsations are more, maybe 3 cylinders or 5 cylinders. That again choice depends on the capacity and cost. Usually 3 cylinder is the most common one that is there. So here we have a individual one offline, or it may be connected to the online homogenizers of different capacities. The line must be not having air, otherwise the pressure gauge will fluctuate too lot. And also if there is a pipeline, the pipeline supports must be independent. They should not weigh down onto the homogenizer and convey the vibrations to the pasteurizers if it is online. That's an important one. Again, here the capacities are varying. Indian manufacturers ones are still not up to the mark, so to say, but I mean the valves and the connecting rods are usually go away with the one. We do have a aseptic homogenizers also in this. That is for the UHT processing online. Their aseptic homogenizers are also used. So the other, since I restricted my thing to the sorry. So here vacuum pan, this is about 200 liters capacity. If you want to concentrate milk for a small test trial of the equipment of a product, a new test trial, or you can even have a smaller capacity ones that is there. Say 200 kgs of milk can be taken and concentrated in vacuum. In the vacuum, it can be done. So the boiling point will hardly exceed 55 or 60 degrees centigrade with the control of the steam, and also the condensation by the tubular heat exchanger, where water will be through a cooling tower, will be cooling and condensing it. The main thing is that you have to be watchful that the effervescence should not be too much, though the milk droplets may also get carried away along the vapor. That you will have to take care. So this is again a versatile equipment for a startup people, where any liquid food can be concentrated safely without any damage. We are trying with sweetened condensed milk, or we are trying with some fruit juices also. We are fruit pulps also. We have tried it over here. So here the installation, we will have to follow the main instructions. These are the general instructions for the manufacturers, for the people when you're buying. Manufacturer instructions must be followed. and the manufacturer may sometimes exclude some of the required items, maybe support, say, some civil works or service lines that are there. So that will be out of the battery that will be there. That you have to synchronize its supply and completing in time. Otherwise, the delay may cause certain project delay as well as the legal aspects also may be there. And when you are taking the trial runs, you see that the manufacturer is made to be there, and also if there is a deviation in the capacities that is claimed, then either you penalize them to a certain extent before in hand the writing it should be taken, or you may outright reject if the performance is very poor. That's again an important one. Then the important is the drawings, especially the plate heat exchanger drawings. Those things are necessary. Suddenly we want to expand the plate heat exchangers, or we want to change the replace the gaskets, etc. These drawings are very, very important, and we should have it in duplicate so that one is kept safe and another is available in the plant itself. So it's almost same. The installation should be time dependent, of course. Then the training of the personnel also is an important one that is there. So these are the small scale equipment I earlier also shown. 10 liters to 100 liters it is there. So this is both gas based, steam based as well as wood based are there available. Given the supplies, this is again a bottle sterilizer for a small scale. The service equipment can be small also. I say with this 150 kg boiler, say 9 kgs to 10 kgs pressure it will supply, and also chilled water supply that can be there. So these equipment are. The PowerPoint presentation is with this organizers. You can also get that PowerPoint because of the time. This pouch filling machine, mechanical one, or you also have a manual one. This is around 1,000 packets per hour capacity. That is, it's a small one. This cup filling for a small 6 by 6 by 8 feet or 8 by 8 feet like that. Tonnage of ton of refrigeration dependent, and also space dependent. Cold storage at 4 degrees or minus 20 degrees centigrade. This is one. This is one I wanted to give the costs that are there. You can take down this range of costs for the young entrepreneurs. This is a range, maybe 10 to 20% variation could be there. This is the suppliers that I had given. You can have the suppliers. This in getting given the list of suppliers. Okay. Thank you. And this is my email address. You can correspond or talk to fund. We have projects reports for 1,000 liters, 5,000 liters, 10,000 liters, 10,000, 1 lakh liters. Also, ready project reports are there. Any of the people. Only thing is, yeah. So I thank the organizers, and sorry for the running out of the time. The PowerPoint presentation is available. You can take it. Thank you.
Thank you so much, sir, for providing us insights on the equipment and its specifications. So for the next technical talk, we have between us Shri Shashi Kumar, co-founder and chief executive officer of Messrs. Akshay Kapal, Bengaluru.
Yeah, thank you, and thank you, Dr. Murali, for chairing this session, and also my co-speakers. Thank you very much. So just to give a little bit our perspective on milk processing, okay, there have been a host of challenges, especially in the processing industry. So one of the biggest challenges we see is the quality of the raw material itself. That is the milk, okay? To really need to get a world-class milk, some of the panel members did mention that, okay, at the point of production is chilling possible. So that is one area where I believe there needs to be a substantial work happening across the industry. More and more players, what we are seeing is trying to really see how the upstream, basically the production side, okay, can be streamlined. Though we have got technically a surplus milk production in the country, but what we see is the quality of the milk production is not up to standards, and that actually impacts the kind of processing interventions we can do. For example, why we are not able to make probably the best quality cheeses, why we are focused on processed cheeses, why we are not able to get into really artisanal cheeses like Europe or US. So one of the biggest problems we definitely believe is the quality of milk. Quality of milk should start at the point of production, especially with farmers. The second point is especially some of the production challenges we face because of fairly unorganized dairy production system. Dairy production systems actually focus on 1 or 2 or 3 cows farmers, where the management training of farmers to produce quality milk is almost absent. For example, when a cow is injected with let's say antibiotics, what are the steps farmers should take? Actually, is the knowledge is non-existent. Though there have been a lot of effort attempts by cooperatives to educate farmers, especially what to do when antibiotics are injected. I think it's a fairly what you call hello. Yeah. So what I was saying is, especially for the processing industry to really look into the quality of raw material, antibiotics in the milk needs to be really controlled. The second aspect, especially on the aflatoxins in the milk right now, they're substantially higher than statutory limits more often than not, especially due to feeding practices, how the concentrate feeds are stored, how they are administered. There are a lot of challenges. The education in that direction is very, very critical. Also, I believe the processing industry, especially when it comes to one of the speakers spoke about D2C, where we're putting milk directly in the consumer doorstep through direct to consumer initiatives. So that actually needs a little bit different thinking in the processing point of view. So these direct to see customers, more often than not, especially the premium side of the customers like us, they look for, let me say, packaging which is environmental friendly. So we need to be thinking, how do we move away from mostly pouch packing systems we have across the country right now. Though there have been some initiatives on gable top, not much of a progress, for various challenges, especially consumers don't understand gable top, and there have been a lot of issues on recycling. Also, the processing industry needs a little bit focus on how the waste should be handled. Though we are delivering pouches to consumers, how that can be collected and scientifically handled. So processing industry needs a lot of support in that direction, or else we will not be able to make environment viable businesses. So we can keep dumping plastic to consumer end, and consumers don't know how to handle it. It goes through recycling systems handled by let me say municipality councils. They don't know how to handle the virgin plastic. There are a lot of challenges. We need to really see how the processors, especially get into recycling of both, let me say, the plastic or milk board or whatever. That is the other aspect where a processing industry sees a lot of challenges. Also, the value addition. The value addition actually misunderstood in a lot of places. For example, the most of the value addition in the country is happening with adding sugar as a, let me say, sweetener. So I definitely believe such a wonderful protein is the cheapest form of protein is milk. No matter what other industries talk of, in terms of plant-based protein substitutes, milk gives you a cheapest access to protein. Such a cheapest source of protein, coupled with sugar, actually it is not a good healthy product. It becomes a very, very non-healthy product the moment you add sugar into the product constitutions. So the industry definitely needs look at the industry across the industry alternatives to sugar. What is that we can do as an alternative to sugar? So a lot of innovation needs to happen, especially on sugar substitutes. Stevia is one part where people can really explore, but still not sure of, let me say, health implications on usage of stevia. Also some of the palate issues. People are used to using sugar, but would they appreciate stevia? So that itself is a big question mark. Coming back to, on the cold chain part, I would like to really spend some time. Indian, especially from a point of production till reaching the processing plant, further processing plant till it reaches the consumer. There are a lot of gaps, okay, especially on the production side. The point of production chilling is almost non-existent, zero in the country, except some organized farms where we have got 2,000, 3,000 cows, which I definitely believe is not viable. We should really think of working with farmers with 2 to 3 cows, 5 cows, 10 cows, and build small farmer, okay, where, okay, a point of chilling can be done there. Maybe 50 liters, 100 liters, 150 liters or 250 liters or 500 liters kind of chillers can be integrated at the farm level so that processors can directly pick up the chilled milk from the farm level. That is one area where processing industry needs to really innovate to make sure the quality of the product, okay, is preserved at point of production. Other parties, especially D2C businesses like ours, where we are reaching the milk, okay, directly to consumer, some innovation needs to happen, okay, especially when you go and drop a packet of milk at morning 4 o'clock, okay, some consumers do pick it up at 6 o'clock, 7 o'clock, 8 o'clock. Some people even pick up at 10 o'clock from outside their houses. There is a gap in, okay, the cold chain, okay, of the products, be it milk or a curd or whatever we can think of, maybe with exceptions of, let me say, UHT milk. So how do we really, okay, develop those cold chains? So these are some of the points I had. Okay, in the interest of time, I just wanted to keep it short. And if you have any questions, maybe we can quickly take 1 or 2 questions. Okay, thank you very much for giving this opportunity. Just as a summary, the processing industry, okay, is really going through, okay, a lot of challenges given the current situation. And new business models like D2C, okay, they are changing the milk industry paradigm of milk booths, okay, moving away from that and see how to make these milk deliveries happen at the consumer level. Also challenges like cold chain, okay, challenges like at the production side, antibiotic issues, aflatoxin issues, they're complicating real quality processing happening, okay, across the industry. So if some policymakers can take a note of these, okay, and evolve what some policy decisions. So that would be really helpful for milk processing industry. Thank you very much for this opportunity. Thank you.
Thank you so much, sir.